In this series, you're going to learn the basics of animating in Adobe Animate. And the first thing you need to know is the timeline panel. And in it, we can organize and control the document's content over time in layers and in frames. The timeline shows where animation occurs in the document. And you could add layers using this tool, new layer. And you can rename the layer by clicking on it. You could also delete with this trash icon. We could also create folders, so when we're going to work, we're going to have lots of layers, so it's better to keep organized. So you could create a folder and place your layers under it. Then you could delete. Yes. The other thing you need to know is how to zoom in and zoom out in the timeline. So using this toggle, you could drag it, and if you drag to the right, you could zoom in. If you drag to the left, you could zoom out. And these tools we're going to learn as we animate, so to not get overwhelmed. The other thing you need to know is that you'll notice that you have two types of numbers in the timeline. You have the seconds, which is the real time. So this is 1 second, 2 seconds. And under it, you'll find the number of frames. So under 1 second, you're going to have 24 frames, because when we created this document, we chose that we wanted 24 frames per second. The next thing you need to know is that there are 3 types of frames. We have the keyframes, which are indicated by the black dots. So this is a keyframe and this is a keyframe. And it means a point in time in which the property of the object will change. The next thing you need to know is frames, and frames are basically an empty rectangle, and it's just a repeated keyframe and nothing changes. So notice here I have a keyframe, and behind it, if I go to the next frame and the other frame and the last frame, it's just repetition of the keyframe. The last type of frames is the blank keyframes. And they're indicated by a circle with just outline. So this is an empty blank keyframe. And to add keyframes or frames or black frames, you could use shortcuts. So F6 for keyframes, F5 for frames, and F7 for blank frames. You could also add frames using this tool. So if you click on it, you could add a keyframe or a blank keyframe or a frame. And also another thing that you should that's better to do while working is to click this toggle, auto keyframe. So whenever you change anything, it automatically adds a keyframe. And these frames, which are just gray, dark gray, are empty. They have nothing in them. They have no frames and nothing happens there. What you should know when working in Adobe Animate and animating is that there are 2 types of animation. We have the frame-by-frame animation, which is basically you draw in each frame a different version of the frame before it, and when you put them in a sequence, it's as if they're moving or changing by themselves. The next type of animation is tweening, and you basically draw, let's say, your circle in point A, and then go to frame 5 and draw it in point B. And Adobe Animate will figure out what are the in-between frames that are between these 2 frames that you drew. So it will animate your circle from point A to point B. There are different kinds of tweening that you could apply in Adobe Animate. One is object tween, the second is classic tween, and the third is motion tween. And we will be covering them during this series.